38 Triple D. Let your mind race on that one, but more important, listen to the very inspiring story from which the 38 Triple D was derived. You'll be inspired. Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Michaela Cox for a second episode where we've asked her to expand a little bit further on her topic of 38 Triple D, the Triple Ds being divorce, death, and disability, where we asked her to talk about the death of her husband, the grieving she went through, and the process she used to overcome the grief, or let's say probably a better term is rather than overcome, how she's dealing with her grief. And she has developed a method where she can use the word grace as an acronym to help others and herself through the period of grieving. Marty, it's a great episode where Michaela expounds a little bit further on helping people through grieving. What are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Michaela?
Michaela has gone through a life full of struggles, but yet at the same time, she does not let those struggles take her down. I'm sure she's had her moments where she's been like, Lord, can I go through this? Help me through this. And she says each person grieves differently. So accept your way of grieving. But like you said, she uses the acronym GRACE when she coaches other people to help them through that process.
And it's a great opportunity to learn. You'll learn from her resolve. She will not accept being a victim. There are a lot of other D's, such as depression, deception, despair, any of those kind of things. She will not allow any of that in her life. Let's listen and learn together. Michaela, it's great to have you back with us. When we recorded for our last episode, you had mentioned you lost your husband, who died when you were about 38 years old. That's my recollection. And
correct. Going on 7.5 years ago in October.
All right. And you were, am I thinking correctly, about 38 years old?
I was when he passed away. That, like I said, that was 7 years ago. So I'll be 46 in November. Time, keeps on passing
All right.
by.
And so, Michaela, a lot of our listeners are grieving through various things, and not necessarily the death of a husband, but grieving because of something. And I wonder if you would take the time to explain to our listeners how you processed what must have been a devastating situation in your life, losing your husband. how long did it take you to, I'm going to say, get over the rawness of it? And I'm not sure I'm going to use the right terms, but in some ways you never get over it, but you
Right.
just learn how to deal with it, maybe. I don't want to suppose that I know how to grieve. My parents are no longer living. I grieved that in an uncle and a grandfather who mentored me. So I've been through that, but never a husband. I'm very grateful that Marty is still with me. But Michaela, it's great to have you back with us.
Well, thank you for having me, and it is an important topic, and I'm grateful and willing to answer any questions and be of service. I will say at the outset, I can only speak to what I've been through. I don't have all the answers, but I can provide what I've learned in my own journey. And you're correct to say that every experience is different, but there are some commonalities that grief is in fact grief is grief, even though we all come to it for different reasons or different circumstances or different ways, but it is still the same process and it is a process. So,
Our listeners are very interested in your perspective. I don't think there is a person who is the expert on grieving because everyone is different and they process it differently. But our listeners are very interested in your journey. Where do you want to start with this, Michaela? Maybe somewhat close to the time your husband passed away. How did you process that? And I think one thing our listeners are going to be very interested in knowing, how long did it take for you to, I'm not sure if the word is deal with it. I'm not sure what the right term is.
well, it's a simple but complex answer, and we'll start at the beginning because when I was happy to be here before, I spoke of, and the reason why it ties together is my original journey of what I call my 38 triple D of disability, lifelong disability of legal blindness, divorce in 2005 at 26. And then I was blessed to meet my love of my life, the man that passed away in 2017. So death in 2017, a beloved husband, widowhood, grief, loss, and solo parenting is because so much of what we're fixing to speak of, I actually learned early in life with the disability. And then it occurred to me when I went through my divorce and first interesting first marriage and then losing my husband, the one I was blessed to know and marry after the fact of the divorce. Well, if it worked in one situation, then I just need to apply it again because basically grief is a different animal in and of itself, but you're still choosing to work through something, an obstacle, a challenge, an adversity. And so what I realized in each of these three Ds by the age of 38 is that I have a choice. I can either be a victim or a victor. And once you decide to overcome and work through things, it's the same thing. While each obstacle or adversity is different, it has its own idiosyncrasies or parts to it. And what mine are not the same as another person's and vice versa. It's still the same idea. So these principles that have helped me in every season of life, especially in grief, apply to anyone who wants to overcome. I was having a conversation with a friend, another aspect of my life, and we were talking about what I've been through with grief. And she said, you need to give yourself some grace. I was like, I'm not very good at that, but grief has taught me that. And I'm going, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, light bulb moment, grief through grace. So I decided after writing my Now I See series of what my experience was and guiding someone through that journey of what we just spoke of, I was going to write another series called Finding Grace Through Grief that gave a more tangible, practical approach to what it would be like for someone to have to also travel that journey of grief. And I think that was where you're going to find the answers you're hoping to offer your audience. And I can dive into that if you'd like.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I call it discovering the 5 keys of grace, of grief, finding grace through grief. It's a 5-step process. Like I said, I am speaking of it in the context of grief and loss, but it would really work for anyone in any circumstance. But it did assist me in what I went through at age 38 in 2017 and still going through because I don't know if you really get over it. I think when you're learning how to deal with it, you learn it's a process and you learn to work through it and live through it and live around it. It never really leaves you. Hopefully, some days are better than others. Some days you may feel like you're taking a couple steps forwards and then a couple steps back. And you'll learn that it's a world of and both. It's never just one thing anymore. It's not as neat and tidy of this linear process that can be nicely wrapped up in a package with a awful bow on it that we'd like to think in our preferred comfort of non-messiness humans. But It's not that simple. We are messy human beings with complexities, and grief is equally as its own complex situation. I often like to think of it as a boomerang, and it'll come back and right back at you and knock you on your butt. But the process of which I've applied is the 5 keys of finding grace through grief, meaning that we're going to start with number 1. I talk about grounding. I have found in my experience in life, and especially in grief, that first and foremost, it's always been my faith that grounds me. I wouldn't be able to be here today or have these conversations if it wasn't for my faith. I come from a background of Christianity and believing in my Lord Jesus Christ, my Savior, and how that's grounded me and giving me a foundation for my life and overcoming things. And then also, of course, my family and my friends, especially my friends. And I believe in times of tribulation and adversity, you need to know your why, or else why would we keep going? You need a why, to a purpose that you go back to ground you in that season, that you do within your foundation of whatever that may be for whoever we're speaking of. Me personally, it's Christianity, but I can only speak to my own journey, even though I believe that's the true way. I may not be the path for everyone, but I hope it is. So for me, I found my grounding in my faith, in my family, especially in my friends. And then I knew at the time in 2017, my children were 6 and 3. Now they're 11 and 14. And so my purpose had to become them and doing what I had to do for them. And so that's what grounded me all these years and still grounds me. And then the next is the R of what I call redemption through redesign. For the ones who are of a Christian background, we're redeemed, and through redemption, things can be changed and salvaged and put back together, maybe in a new way, but still put back together. And for me, in every step of my journey, I've always chosen to not be defined by my circumstances, but to define it for myself. And what that means to me is we don't always choose the circumstances that we're given. I didn't choose to lose my husband at 38 and have my children at 6 and 3 lose their father. I didn't choose to be born with a disability. Yes, I walked away from my first marriage, but it was through choices of my ex-husband's making that no longer made it a viable situation. And so I left. But the point is, I do get to have control and choose how I react to it, what I do with it. It's very much like a blank canvas. You may not like the canvas you were given or the materials you were given, but you have control as the artist of choosing how you beautifully portray whatever you want to depict on that canvas. Or another analogy, if that helps other people, is you're playing a game of cards. I don't care, be it spades, goldfish, poker, whatever, hearts, gin rummy, bridge, I don't care. Pick whichever game you like. We pick the amount of cards the rules say we get to pick. We have no control what we take out of the deck. But if we're a skillful and strategic player of that game, with the end goal being to win the game to our advantage, then we'll play those cards well and do well at the game of life. So I've always chosen to want to make my own design of things when I've been put in situations that didn't really want to be there, but I still have to do it. So I've always been believed and raised with the idea of you don't quit, you don't stop, you don't give up, and you keep pressing on. And you, like I said, through faith and hard work and determination and dedication, we press on. And so I'm choosing to still redefine my life and redesign it to the life that, even though it's not what I wanted, I can make it what I want. It is what it is, but I can make what I will of it, I should say. A is for learning to live in abundance. That can mean several things. And while some people think of finances in that, I'm not. I have a financial person. He's a great guy, and I let him do that. That's not my area of expertise. But the way I speak of it as is our mindset. I think there's a reason why in our society that we say mindset is a game changer and can unlock all doors, is the master key. And that whatever you put your mind to, you can do it or not do it. If you put your mind to it, you can do it, you'll do it. If you put your mind to it that you can't, you won't. And I almost think that's the harder challenge in the choices, because sometimes in our mindset, our mental space gets bogged down and overloaded and overwhelmed and congested with all these things that we tell ourselves that are untruths, and it discourages us from the very thing we set out to design and to see play out. And so I feel like mindset is a game changer, and it's key. It's probably the harder thing to do than the choice itself. So mindset is essential, whether that's you want to have a positive outlook, you work hard through meditating on the truthful things that you know to be true, whether it's scripture or something else, some truths that I've learned for myself throughout life, whether it's you want to find the joy even in the hard times of life and have even just the smallest seed of gratitude can change your mindset, all those different practices that can be helpful in maintaining an abundant mindset and finding your way to abundance in what could seem like the desert of the season of your life and the hard times. And then we come to the C, which is the fourth key in finding grace through grief, as what I call choosing care and clarity over chaos and confusion. And what I mean by that is these could really all be individual conversations, because there's a lot to unpack, and I'll answer whatever questions you want. But what I mean by choosing care and clarity, excuse me, I got tongue tied, is really focusing on self care. I was not always the greatest at that, self admitting, especially in a really busy time in my life. Before my husband died, we were married, living in New Hampshire. He was military. He was going to grad school. I was going to grad school. When I started grad school, I had an 8-month-old daughter that we had, and then I decided we would have another child in grad school. What was I thinking? It was really chaotic then, and he had to travel for military, and it was just craziness. But I lived to tell. But grief taught me that if you want to survive something, and then more precisely, you want to thrive it, you absolutely need to take time for yourself, or it will land you on your butt, whether you want it to or not. And so there's different ways of looking at self-care. There's different types of self-care. There's different ways self-care affect people, what they think of self-care. And a lot of it has to do with the ideas, as long as you are caring for yourself in whatever way or fashion or form that looks like for you. Because what fills my cup and refreshes my soul will be something totally different for someone else, and vice versa. I will never run on a track, okay? I enjoy being comfortable on my couch with a nice TV show or an audiobook. Running is work to me. That's not relaxation, but more power, Godspeed. God bless you. Knock yourself out if you want to run a marathon. If that's your self-care, then do it. It's just, that's not me. I enjoy being with my girlfriends. I enjoy traveling. I took a week for myself last week when I was at the beach with a friend. That was a very wonderful, good take a step back from everything and just recharge. Self-care allows you to care for yourself so that you do have clarity of mind, to maintain the abundant mindset, to stay true to the choices that you want to make in designing your new life and not being defined by your circumstances, that you ground yourself in by whatever is your purpose or your why or your faith that helps you to stay true to this course that you're mapping out. The last part of the grace and grief is the E for equipped. I think people struggle with this one in some ways because not everyone is comfortable with the notion of asking for help or getting what they need, whether it's because they're ashamed or they're embarrassed or they're bashful or it makes them feel weak or whatever, fill in the blank. I can't speak for everyone else. I personally got over that a long time ago. With a disability, you wouldn't get anything done if you didn't get what you needed to help accomplish what you need to accomplish around a disability. So that's no longer a thing for me. I think a huge piece of being equipped is self advocacy, advocating for yourself and seeking out what you need. I mean, really, it's as simple as we teach our kids in school. If you have a question, you raise your hand and you say, explain, what's the answer to this? It's really, that's all you're doing, is that you're asking for what you need to get to the next thing that you want to accomplish. And so it's just as true in adversity. You need to be equipped sometimes, whether that by friends helping you come alongside you, whether that you may need financial things, you may need legal things. I go to counseling, I take time for myself. It equips me to keep being able to sustain this journey in a hard season. And I mean, it's no different from a road trip where if you want to go on a trip, you're not going to get very far out of your house or your driveway if you don't have a car with a tank full of gas, or you get a ride to the bus station or Uber or a Lyft, or, I don't know, maybe you bought an airline ticket and you fly there, whatever. You're not going to go anywhere without getting there somehow anymore. Do you really want to sleep in your car or sleep on the street? So you need a hotel, you need a friend's couch to stay on. I doubt you want to go without food. That doesn't do very well for our human experiences. We need food and water and drinks, and you may want some fun road tape mix or something for the journey. But so my point is, you equip yourself with the things that you need. And sometimes that's self-care, and that helps you to have the good mindset that keeps you true to what you want to do in life, and you figure it out. So through all these 5 things of the finding grace through grief, it's allowed me to process my journey. I'm not saying it's easy or that I haven't had my days where I struggled, but like I said, it's an ebb and flow. Sometimes it's harder and sometimes it's not. And some things get better. And then as new things come up, you figure that part out too.
I'm going to go through the 1 through 5 and make sure I got that down right. It's the 5 steps to grace through grief, grounding in faith, and then redemption to
Yes, you are right. The grounding is the first step,
redemption to,
and design.
and then learning to live in abundance,
Yes.
choosing self-care, clarity
Okay.
of mind,
Care and clarity over chaos and chaos.
and then equipping, seeking out what you need.
Finding grace through grief. And that's what's helped me in this process of grief and loss and in all aspects of my life, actually. And that's what helped me is I realized, even though I've done it before, I can take the same skill set of what I did with a disability and a divorce and apply it to the new adversity that I was facing, because it's overcoming is the same idea no matter what you're trying to overcome. It just so happens in this context, it was the grief and loss of dealing with my losing my partner and husband.
You have from my perception, a very methodic, resolved approach to this. Is that a characteristic of your attributes, Michaela, or did you have to develop that methodic resolve over a period of time?
I tend to be in my personality very methodical, but that process came out of, how they say necessity is the mother of all invention. I got
Yep.
thrown in these situations, and it's just how I found that it worked for me to get through disability. If I didn't have something to ground me, I probably would have quit a long time ago, figuring out the obstacles that I had at every turn with the disability. I wouldn't have accomplished what I did if I didn't know my purpose and my reasoning for why am I working my butt off all these years. If I didn't choose to not be defined by that circumstance, I would have never done what I did. If I didn't have the positive mindset of what I was taught to grow up with of don't quit, don't stop, don't give up, I would have done that a long time ago. And then I did learn the self-care part much later in life to survive and thrive in this situation and season of life of grief. And I learned to be equipped a long time ago. So I just applied those to the other things to help me overcome what it was like to put her life back together after being divorced and having to let go of that first marriage. And then now figuring out life as a military widow and a single mom and a solo mom with 2 kids and being disabled and having to literally, like I said, we were living in New Hampshire and we had to move cross country and start our lives all over again. So I am methodical and I pay very much to the details, but it's also just a process that's been, what's the word I'm looking for? I curated, or I marinated over these years of practice of knowing what it was like to unfortunately learning how to overcome and be empowered to go from surviving to thriving.
You've got such a great attitude. A thought I have is that from the triple D, disability, death, divorce, could have led to a quad D of depression. And
Does
did
come out
you
sometimes. That's why
did,
I go to
did
counseling and I work on therapy, and I've always chosen to work on myself so that I can keep going, and process my stuff.
No, that's good. Okay, so you are acknowledging that would you have been depressed to some degree, or you went to counseling to avoid depression?
I go to counseling a lot. I'm a huge believer in counseling. I believe it helps us with our self and our issues and our baggage in life. I very much believe it's a healthy way of addressing things in life, and it is a way of equipping yourself, and it's a way of taking care of yourself too, at least your mental aspect of your life. And I say it all the time, I'm a huge proponent of it. I will probably always be in counseling, and I I make a funny about it, not that it's a funny thing, but just joke on myself. And I tell my therapist this, I don't live paycheck to paycheck, I live counseling session to counseling session. I
Uh,
think it's a great way to take care of things in life. You're taking time for yourself to deal with what you need to deal with so that you can be the best version of you and do what you have to do for yourself, for the ones that are in your life that care about you and that you have to take care of.
I want to build on faith. Marty and I, too, are faith-based, and what I mean by that, Jesus Christ is our Lord and
Yes,
Savior.
absolutely.
To him all we owe.
Yes.
Now, in the context of faith, Did you have to work through a period of time to where, golly, all these the triple D's just had me down for a period of time until you realized, no, there's something good has to be in this? That, Michaela, I'm thinking that you have such a great story from this, that you are helping others through your story of having to go through a lot of life trauma. And so did you have to develop, strengthen your faith over a period of time, or did you just have that faith right up front?
I've been a Christian longer than I haven't because I came to my personal decision to follow our Lord Jesus Christ very early on in life. So it's been more a part of my life than not. I think it's a developing process for anyone because what we understand at a young age versus our teenage years versus young adulthood versus later adulthood. And I think another aspect of that is certain experiences bring different aspects to how we understand our faith compared to when we hadn't gone through those experiences. I know for a fact that for myself that after losing my husband, there's a difference between head knowledge and heart knowledge and the rubber meeting the road and you really coming to a true understanding of it. There was things I knew about him, but I didn't think about him the way I do now. Like I delved deeper into him, and I can't say that I haven't had arguments or interesting conversations with God over the last 7.5 years. I would be lying if I hadn't. I think it was really challenging for me after my divorce because it made me look at things very differently about why is this happening, or I did all the right things and I still end up in this position. So we come to different, deeper knowledge of certain truths that maybe we hadn't before, and then dealing with it now. I mean, I never doubted my faith. I still don't doubt my faith, and I know I wouldn't be here without him, obviously. And actually, for the sake of your audience, I don't remember if we talked about this last night. I was actually born totally blind, and then the Lord granted me my sight at 7 months old and did a miracle in my life. And even though it's still impaired, I do in fact see when I'm not supposed to be seeing. So that was kind of a early on in my life that was a part of my faith story, that was always inherently woven into my story. But I've struggled with a lot of things that have caused those deeper conversations and a little bit argumentative chats, shall we say, that have made me trying to figure out what is the point of all this and how can this be what it needs to be and all those different things. But I don't have all the answers. I've never claimed to have all the answers. I won't have all the answers. I'm not God, thank God. He's only God, and I don't need to be God. I don't want to be God. That's his job. But I do believe that whenever we're given a story or a message or a testimony, it's for a reason, a purpose. So if nothing else, I can use it to help other people because oftentimes, especially in grief, not that it can't happen in other situations, but I think particular to grief, you feel very much alone and it's a lonely journey. But that doesn't mean you have to go through it alone. And I think it's one of the hardest things to go through. And so I feel like if I can show people what I've learned, then maybe it can help them along their own journey through grief and loss. I don't know.
No, that's very good. Let me ask you about your faith. Was there a period of time where, as you're thinking through or experiencing the triple D's and a fourth D of depression, that kind of a thing, that Lord, there has to be something good in this? Was that a part of your thought process? Lord, show me what good, what benefit there can be through all of this?
Yes, it is a part of my process. And I think I'm figuring pieces of that out and I'm still trying to, not so much that I don't know where it's going to go now, but it's more of what to do with it now that I know what I think it's supposed to be. Um, the, like I said, I wrote the Now I See series to walk people through the journey of what it is to live with 38 triple D. And then after the first book, the second and the rest of the series will be around the grief journey that I've been on. But then I decided, since the last time I spoke, I believe, because it only came out in March, to write a more practical, tangible approach to going through grief, which is what we discussed, the 5 keys of going through grace, finding grace through grief series, which has 3 parts to it right now, the actual book, and then the companion guide to give people space to journal about their own journey and kind of ponder these questions that I've proposed in the series, and then a part 3, which is going to be is a self-care journal that gives them a practical path to doing self-care to help, excuse me, I'm so sorry, to care for themselves on their journey so they can have a better way of thriving and not just surviving their grief and loss. And then since those came out in March, I will be adding 2 pieces to it that I've outlined, but I haven't started writing yet. I want to add a 365 devotion to walk people through those questions throughout the year. And then I can't remember the exact word I worded it, but it's basically going to be dealing with the myths or lies and truths about grief, that I'll be adding to that series that is more, I think, helpful for people who are walking through grief, because it's one thing to say it, but it's like, okay, I get what you're saying, but then how do you actually do that? You need that kind of little spoonful, little tangible tidbits or hopefully nuggets of gold to walk them actually through. Like, I get what she's saying, but then how do I actually apply this to make it be a reality in my own life as I'm traveling my own journey of grief?
Sure. Let me ask you for this, and we probably discussed this in the first episode, but I want to ask you about your sight. You were born blind and then you regained some sight. Can you see partially now, or where are you with your sight?
I am able to see, and I do have vision. It's complex because there's like 6 different parts that go into that lovely, complicated visual concoction cocktail. But I do see. It just depends on the circumstances of what I'm in as to how that's impacted. So I do have sight when I'm not supposed to, according to the medical field. It's just impaired, and the main way it affects me. I don't drive. Y'all are welcome. Legal blindness and driving don't need to go together, so the roads are
Yep.
safer. Good public community service there. Everyone's safer, happy to stay off the roads. And it takes me longer to do things. And it's had impact at different levels, different phases in life, because with each season and part of life brings different challenges. So I had to find, while the vision stayed the same, I had to find different approaches to tackle whatever the new thing was in that season of life, whether it was school or transportation or parenting or whatever, fill in the blank. So
When you're writing or you're writing out all of this, how do you see it?
I
I'm
enlarge.
I'm
I'm on a
scrambling for
MacBook.
words.
Yeah, I understand. I'm on a MacBook, and a lot of times in technology, especially the more well-developed and advanced technology we have, there's all sorts of ways of accessibility for the impaired and other disabilities. So I could do audio, and a lot of people do that, but I prefer to actually just write it out, because that's the way my brain helps me process what do I want to write as I'm thinking about it, as I'm typing it out. And I'm not really looking at the screen while I'm typing. I'm just memorizing where the letters are on the keyboard, like your home keys and whatnot. And then I have an editor that reads it, and then I enlarge and various different coping mechanisms or, approaches to working around. If you can't move the mountain, which I can't move my disability, but I can find a way over, under, and through the mountain. So I have different ways of adjusting.
I'm very curious, those of
That's
us
amazing.
it is, those of us who have sight look at a keyboard, and with practice, we just learned how to type. How did you learn the keyboard? I guess that's my question.
I was taught it and I memorized it. One of my best assets is my memory and my hearing, and I memorize everything. And a lot of times I've done things for so long, I don't remember how it got started. It's like everything has its place and everything has its right place. And I do better having things memorized where they're at, because it takes me a lot of time to search for it and I just go right to it. Like, this may be TMI, like anything that can be alphabetized, it will be alphabetized in my home, so that I have a pretty good memory about where it should be on a shelf. I don't have to like read all the stuff. And then in my wallet, my debit cards and credit cards are either organized according to alphabet or the order in which I use them the most. So I just know first is always this card. I don't have to look at it. I don't have to think about it. It's just, I know where it's at.
Well, there's some similarities between you and Marty. Marty has good sight, but she's so organized. She wants all of her spices alphabetized and so forth.
Absolutely. Yep.
Oh my goodness.
And they're not right now. I need to reorganize
Right. I
myself.
understand that. Being organized and my hearing and my memory are some of my best assets for coping with life and allowing me to navigate life with not very good vision.
I want to ask you, your parents, were they instrumental in a lot of your growth? You're helping you to learn how to do all of this?
Yeah, in my earlier life, I mean, once you get to a point and you learn the skill set, you hopefully just apply it and use it and go on about your way and handle your business. But we had to do a lot of advocating with the school system, and that's the whole thing of where don't stop, don't quit, don't give up came from. So yeah.
The school system, was the school system willing to adapt to you, or did you have to go to, let's say, a special school for the blind?
No, well, I did do some training in Louisiana. I was originally born in Houston, Texas, and that's where I went kindergarten through 3rd grade because we moved summer of '88 to Louisiana after my 3rd grade year. So I did my first 4 years there. I did not do any specialized training for visually impaired or blind until the summer of '92 after my 7th grade year in Louisiana, but they legally are required to. They don't really have a choice, and if they don't, then they're in the fight of their lives. So it took a lot of advocating, which is why I'm a huge proponent of avocation and advocating and being an advocate and learning to advocate for yourself, self-avocation or advocacy. I mean, I always had accommodations from the age of 5 all the way through grad school. It took teacher parent conferences. I know I had I think they're called something different now, but back in the day in the '80s and '90s, they were called IEPs, individual lesson plans or
Yep.
whatever. IEP, yeah, individual education.
Individualized education program.
Yeah, exactly. So I always had that. I always had things that I had to do each year. I had bifocals and trifocals when I was a young kid. I had 4 eye surgeries. It was not to fix the problem. And as far as the actual vision, it was more cosmetic because as my eye muscles would develop as I grew, they would either get too loose or too tight and they look very strange and they had to go in and be fixed so it would look and work properly. But I had different technology at different points depending on what school year you're talking about and what was required in that school year. I've done audiobooks or taking in knowledge and information through audio, basically either on actual audio or people reading to me since virtually age the 5th grade. In high school, I did it on cassette. College, I did readers because I didn't want to deal with the behind the times of technology of not keeping up with what the professor wanted. In grad school, when I was living in New Hampshire, it was on CD, and I would listen to all my grad school books while I was doing everything else in the world. And then just various different things. Anytime I took standardized testing, I had accommodations, which it was ridiculous how I had to take the ACT and the GRE and all the things. So, which I've heard have come a long way since I had to do them, which is really good for the ones that have to deal with it now. But I did not have that advantage. I was grateful for the accommodations that I had, but they are nowhere what they are now, what they were when I was coming up. And I wish they were at the level they are today because my life would have been so much easier. But we figured it out and we got it done. And I went on and did what I had to do.
Well, I tell you, I admire that attitude of, hey, nothing's going to keep me down. I will figure it out. I'm going to move on. Do you have a business of counseling, coaching? Do you provide therapy for others?
Oh, God, no, I'm not a therapist. I go to therapy, I'm not a therapist. Ironically enough, I don't have the patience of a therapist because even if I was trained, the only people I would probably be able to help are either children or veterans because I feel like people fall in 2 camps. They're either victims or victors, and I don't really have time for victim mentality, so I don't know how empathetic or compassionate I would be to excuses. I mean, yes, I will work with you for a while but if at some point you don't do it, then I'm like, you're wasting my time and your time. You can go to someone else who wants to entertain and patronize your excuses because obviously I don't do excuses or I wouldn't have done what I've done and I'm not going to play that game. So I don't know how sensitive or supportive I would be in that circumstance. So I not make the best therapist, even though I enjoy therapy. But the Finding Grace Through Grief, I originally thought would be a coaching program, which could be at some point. But my goal right now is, and that's what I'm working on, is trying to figure out. I know in some circles people are aware of Grief Share, which is a 13-week course that help people in the initial parts of their grief, which I think is a stellar program. I went through it myself. But and I take no issues with it. I think it's a phenomenal program. I recommend it to most people when they're ready, they should go through it. But I think what it does, I think it does very good at triage and it shows you what you need to get through grief. But then after 13 weeks, you're like, okay, what now? Grief doesn't stop after 13 weeks. So I am trying to figure out in the process of figuring out how I can turn Finding Grace Through Grief into a more extensive course to walk alongside the people and continuing their journey through grief. I'm just trying to figure out what that's going to look like and how to get that going in communities. I know what I want to do. And like I said, there could still be a coaching aspect to it at some point. I just haven't quite figured out how to get that accomplished. So that's what I'm trying to figure out right now.
Is a digital course a possibility?
It could be.
I would think
I
that
haven't thought about it.
I think you could definitely do that very well. Just a thought, Michaela. You're writing the books, then you verbalize that. And I don't mean the book in an audible form, but more so
It will be
the
eventually.
precepts. Okay.
I want it to be I want all of my books to be in Audible form because I'm like, as you can see, for work purposes and school purposes, it was invaluable to my learning and my growing and being successful in school. I think are immensely valuable. But in the way our world is today, I think people enjoy audiobooks because it's just a different way of taking in knowledge that sometimes is more efficient and effective. And so I believe it serves a huge purpose for a lot of people, whether it's because you are an audible learner or you actually have a disability, it keeps you from physically reading a book or you just enjoy it. So I want them to be, and I'm waiting to see what happens on in the publishing world. There's been a development that I learned about recently. This is getting into the weeds of publishing, and if you're not into it, you don't need to know it. But the company that I self-publish through is Amazon's what's called KDP, their own self-publishing company. It stands for Kindle Direct Publishing. And I heard recently through colleagues that they are playing with a beta program that allows you to record your audiobook format of your books through AI. And so if they make that available to everyone, then I see that as being a very good option in trying to get my books finally into audible form to include the Finding Grace Through Grief, which I'm very excited about. I just have to wait to see where that goes and how it works. And I am not opposed to doing online e-course video format. I just have to figure it out. So it's all things I've considered. I'm just trying to figure out how to put the pieces together to accomplish the direction I want this program that I feel like could be really helpful for a lot of people and equip them to be empowered.
I feel very definitely with your resolve, your very methodic approach. Marty and I are going to follow you, and we feel very confident you're going to have the courses you want, the audio books you want. You're going to have a very thriving business, Michaela. And I want to tell you, Marty and I admire your resolve and how you have the mindset to overcome. Marty and I radically resonate with you. Nope, we too don't want to aid and abet or enable anyone that proclaims to be a victim. Nope, you can by choice get over whatever you're experiencing, and you can, as you have, become a victor of your life circumstances. Michaela, on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you so much for your ability to work through your resolve to make the very best of the triple Ds, the different things you've been through, and you're a real inspiration to a lot of people. Thank you so much for your life, and we look forward to following you and all the good things that are yet to come.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share this with your listeners. I hope it's been beneficial and I hope it is empowering. And I'm always grateful and honored to take the opportunities. And I'm also grateful for your most gracious and kind, generous words.
Thank you.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.